from a letter to Congress released today by the nonprofit group Whistleblower Aid about a whistleblower who's just come forward named Daniel Baroulis. Quote, Mr. Baroulis is coming forward today because of his concern that recent activity by members of DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, have resulted in a significant cybersecurity breach that likely has and continues to expose our government to foreign intelligence and our nation's adversaries. This declaration details DOGE activity within the National Labor Relations Board, the exfiltration of data from NLRB systems, and concerningly, near real-time access by users in Russia. Notably, within minutes of DOGE personnel creating user accounts in NLRB systems, on multiple occasions, someone or something within Russia attempted to log in using all of the valid credentials, usernames and passwords. This, combined with verifiable data being systematically exfiltrated to unknown servers within the United States and perhaps abroad, merits investigation. Joining us now is NLRB whistleblower Daniel Baroulis and his attorney, Andrew Bakay. Mr. Baroulis, Mr. Bakay, I really appreciate you being here. I'm sure this is a stressful time for both of you and a stressful experience being on national TV talking about it. I really appreciate your trust to do this.
Thank you for having us on.
So, Mr. Baroulis, let me ask you about some of the pushback that we've had here. NLRB said in a statement that DOGE didn't access National Labor Relations Board data. They said that DOGE never had access specifically even to the building in which National Labor Relations Board is housed. What's your response to that statement from the agency? We're having a hard time sort of making heads or tails of it.
I totally get that. I think it's an initial knee-jerk reaction. The truth is it was almost immediate after they got notice of this. There's not going to be corroborating evidence like I presented that they're going to be able to present to back up these. What I did is I tried to prove the negatives along the way, and I compartmentalized the investigation. So as part of this, I definitely was careful to not say anything that wasn't true or include anything that I couldn't back up with secondary sources. And so I think if we can get the right people in here for transparency, I would absolutely love it if I was wrong about this. It's just, we need other people. We need real forensic analysis, and that's what we were trying to do with this cert.
And that goes back to what we requested, which is an independent investigation, because again, Dan provided not only what you saw, but the forensic details to back up his concerns. And so part and parcel of an investigation is to, of course, speak to others, and there will be other individuals who will be able to corroborate what Dan saw, because they saw it themselves.
In terms of what you witnessed, you presented this screenshot showing what appears to be a large surge in data leaving the agency. For people who aren't familiar with what the NLRB does and what kind of data that might be, what is the sensitivity of the kinds of data that's housed in NLRB systems? What worries you about that potentially being exfiltrated to parts unknown?
Sure, absolutely. So what we're looking at there in the picture is the outgoing data out of from our internal network. There's also a correlating spike in the outgoing data from the database that houses our internal case data. So things like proprietary company secrets, union organizer names, private affidavits of unfair labor practice complainants. These are things that traditionally would be kept in a judicial system behind lock and key, and not anything to do with efficiency for sure.
Why would the security systems that protect the secrecy and the sort of sanctity of that data ever be disabled? Is there a sort of good faith reason that somebody would allow insecure mobile devices to access that data, or remove multi-factor authentication for people who are trying to access those data? Those security systems being disabled within NLRB systems, to me, just seem completely inexplicable. At least they don't seem like the sort of thing that could be done in a good faith sort of way. But am I missing something? Is that something that IT professionals do for other reasons?
No, you're absolutely correct. They're considered indicators of compromise. And the people that I work with are very meticulous. They're borderline OCD, and these aren't mistakes that I've ever seen them make before. So for all these controls to be off, in this small amount of time, it doesn't speak to being accidental.
Once you and your colleagues decided, sorry, go ahead, Mr. Bakay.
No, and one of the things I also want to point out to you, because you did an outstanding job, Rachel, in going over exactly how foreign intelligence likely was able to try and access NLRB databases. This is more than just the NLRB. Dan is here because he's been brave enough to come forward with what he saw, what he witnessed, what he can actually establish through forensic data. We have heard from others there are many people like Dan, but who are afraid to come forward. And we've also heard that in addition to how the systems were being treated by Doge within NLRB, what we've also seen is that these systems were also connected to Starlink. Now, why is Starlink critical? Starlink is critical because the information that flows through Starlink goes directly to Russia. What has happened was back in last year, the Department of Defense has stopped using Starlink in any way, shape, or form because that is viewed as a direct pipeline there. And this is something that is also being seen in other agencies, not just NLRB. The other thing that's really concerning is that, and I don't want to say that this was done intentionally, it could be done unintentionally by accident by those who are working within Doge, which is they have allowed certain specific critical infrastructure in other agencies, such as within the Department of Energy, where you have nuclear regulatory agencies overseeing our nuclear stockpile, etc., where that has been now opened to the open internet. So critical infrastructure throughout the country has unfortunately been provided access to the open internet, which means our foreign adversaries like Russia can and may have access to all of that. So the way that I would frame this is that what Dan is seeing and what others like Dan are seeing within our government is that this is like Chernobyl and them seeing the control systems light up post meltdown. This is where we are.
Let me be clear on the issue of foreign access to NLRB systems. What you saw, Dan, is a Russian IP address. So you can spoof an IP address. It could be somebody pretending to be in Russia and not actually being there. Attempting to log into these systems in very close proximity to the time that Doge was creating, Doge, as you say, was creating accounts in order to access these systems. But there's no proof of who that was, or if in fact that was, a foreign intelligence service or even a foreign actor, right? It was just a Russian IP address, right?
So there are some caveats, but to the effect, yes, it was the same geolocation multiple times, and it's just one of the small factors that adds up to the bigger picture. You have one of these, you consider it maybe a fluke, but you have 40 or 50 of these indicators, and the bigger picture becomes clear.
Let me ask you about the threat that you received, Dan. You and your colleagues at NLRB had decided to pursue a formal investigation into what you regarded as a breach of the data and systems at your agency. You prepared a request to CISA at the Department of Homeland Security to help you with that investigation. And then you received a threat at your home where you live?
Where I hadn't lived for too long either. I've only been there 2 months. The only place that I've actually updated that address is in the OPM database for my payroll with the government. That's really, I haven't even updated my bank card yet. So
can you tell us about the character of the threat?
I think it was vague enough to not be. Can I just?
I can jump in there for Dan because this is actually quite difficult for him to talk about because it is quite personal. So this is a letter who somebody had drafted. And within the letter, there was specific information about Dan that can only be obtained through, for example, internal databases within the government. Because it's not anything, we've had individuals conduct an investigation. We've had our own investigative team conduct an investigation to see whether or not any of this is really easily accessible online, and it's not. And so there's information that very few individuals will know. It could be something that was submitted to the government on an SF-86, a security clearance background investigation, etc. And the fact that he's only been at this residence for 2 months or less. We have that. We have the fact that somebody literally figured out where he lives, taped this note to his door, and flew a drone above him while he was walking his dog. I mean, I've only seen this once or twice in the years where I've represented whistleblowers or conducted investigations like this. When I saw this made me pause and get concerned about Dan and what's going on. And this is pure and simple witness and whistleblower intimidation because this came forward before we even filed anything with the government, which means that somebody was monitoring his use of systems within the government which for me is, it is an indicator as to where this is coming from. And the funny thing is that this was clearly done to intimidate him, to stop him from coming forward, but it didn't. And the reason why Dan came forward is not just to ensure that the truth comes out, but that other folks like him have the courage to come forward, because a lot of people believe or think that something is amiss, that this is happening within our agencies and within our government. But guess what? It is. And we have the evidence to establish that. And we need other people to come forward, because you know what? And one of my colleagues has said this once in the past, and it's so true. Courage is contagious. And this is in part why Dan is here and speaking with you today, not behind a silhouette or a screen, but directly to you today and to everybody, so that way we can hear what's actually happening.
I agree. It's really to the point of where I feel like there's a culture of fear in the government right now that we're trying to combat. And by coming forward and standing up, even with this happening, I feel like fear and apathy are the death of democracy. And we can kind of, fight that if somebody's able to just show that they can do this and it's okay. I have plenty of other friends at other agencies that are terrified right now to come forward with what they have. And my hope is that they see this and they're able to do that now.
One of the things that Dan has told me is that he hopes that he's wrong.
Absolutely.
This is not something that we want to be the case, but we've been able to stress test this not just through Dan's own research and investigation, but through subject matter experts with whom we've worked in preparing this disclosure. And so what we're asking for is an investigation, somebody to look at this and take this seriously, because you know what? There's personal identifiable information affecting American citizens that's flying out from the United States government, likely to Russia. But if that's not enough, then it's our national security. I mean, at some point, we all have to collectively wake up and say no and rebuild. Because unfortunately, I'm concerned that we're in a place where we can't undo what has been done, but we can know what happened, who did something wrong, hold people accountable, even if it's, at some point in time in the future, and rebuild, because that's where we need to be.
And again, the request here is for an independent investigation by law enforcement and Congress. National Labor Relations Board whistleblower Daniel Baroulis and attorney Andrew Bakay. Mr. Baroulis, as I said at the outset, I know this is a very stressful time, and this is a stressful thing, including being on television with me right now. I thank you for your trust in doing it. Thank you for your bravery. Thank you both for helping us understand.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your coverage.
All right.
Yes.
All right. More news ahead here tonight. Stay with us.